looking fresh, looking dapper. Ugh, y'all ain't ready for this type of show.
Ways at night, searching for justice, blind justice, a guardian devil. I was 12 years old. I had lost my sight, but I got something back in return.
What's going on, everybody? This is Emperor and Tori. Oh God, that sounds so good every time I say it. Today we're gonna be doing the Daredevil Man Without Fear mini-series, where we go over the movies, well, movies and TV show, and I break down what works and what doesn't work. I just added in the Netflix series because I said, hey, why not? Might as well. But pretty much here are the rules. I will talk about I'll talk about one. We're gonna talk about that media in particular. So if I'm talking about the original Daredevil, which I'm going to talk about first, is pertain to that one. It does not pertain to the other two, nor do the other two pertain to the original cut. I want to keep it simply focused on that one, and I talk about its strengths and weaknesses while showing you some clips of what I mean. So, without further ado, let's actually talk about Daredevil, the Man Without Fear, Part 1. To give you some context or idea of who Daredevil is, we need to go back to April of 1964. Pretty much it's still in the mid 60s when Marvel was booming and everything. Stan Lee wanted to create a new character that had a disability. So he pondered over and finally came to the realization that the disability would be a guy who is blind but can do amazing things. At first he was hesitant on actually putting this character out, but with the help of Bill Everett, Bill Everett, and with the input of Jack Kirby. Fun fact, I always thought it was Stan Lee and Jack Kirby who created the character, but it was actually Stan Lee and Bill Everett. Now back to the story. But Bill Everett was the artist and Stan Lee was the writer. And they put out the book, and pretty much a couple weeks after the book had came out, they had started getting fan mails from I wouldn't say blind people, but an organization that dealt with people who were blind, and it was overwhelming. He didn't know if this would be offensive or this would actually go somewhere. So, fun fact. So there you go. But when Stan Lee was writing him, it was more of a swashbuckling type of tale and type of superhero. Really, it wasn't really meant to be like Spider-Man, where Spider-Man is the everyday man, or anyone can wear the mask. Daredevil was pretty much the whole concept or idea of what would happen if a man was struck with blindness but had these fascinating powers, and pretty much what would he do with them. And pretty much he became a good guy. There's two versions of him. There's the Stan Lee version, and then there is the Frank Miller version. The Frank Miller version came out in 1984, I want to say. No, 1980s. So I was off. But that's not the point. The point is that eventually during this time, Frank Miller was pretty much a prominent artist, and Daredevil wasn't really selling as well as it used to, so they handed the book over to Frank Miller, and Frank Miller revised the whole character indeed. Instead of going with the Stan Lee origin, he made up a new origin while keeping some of the elements of Stan Lee. That being him getting struck with the the radioactive chemicals that made him blind, his dad, and the reason why he would become Daredevil. It was just altered a bit. And in the miniseries, The Man Without Fear, pretty much was, I think it was either a 4-part or 5-part miniseries. I cannot remember. I have two of them. But in that story is a whole reworking, and it introduces characters like Stick, Elektra. Kingpin was already prominently known, but he was more of, from other reviewers and people who've gone more in depth into uh, the Kingpin, aka Wilson Fisk, he was more of a James Bond type villain for Spider-Man. The only difference being is that Kingpin didn't have powers. Uh, yeah, some people may think that Kingpin has powers. Kingpin does not have powers at all. He was able to go toe to toe with Spider-Man, and even on occasionally like whoop his ass. And yeah, also fun fact: Kingpin is not fat. All of that muscle and all of that fat is actually just undeveloped muscle. In the cartoon series of not Spectacular Spider-Man, but these Spider-Man from 1994, he states that pretty much he's 1% body fat, but the rest of him is all muscle. So, um, yeah, the dude is pretty beefy. So there you go. Eventually, he would leave the Marvel. He would not leave the Marvel, but leave the Spider-Man side for a while and become a notable candidate for Daredevil's arch enemy. I always thought it was Bullseye, but again, Kingpin is the better suit for that part. So, now that I've laid out the whole groundwork and the history of the character, um, also he's very Catholic, very religious. So that's one of the things that appealed to me, is I'm not Catholic, but I did like what they did with that part of his life. Most people, whenever they hear religion in a comic book, it's always depicted as this this thing that's just there, and then there you go. But no, this is like a core part of Matt's character, that he is Catholic. He has Catholic guilt. Let's talk about the movie now. The movies, I wouldn't say where to. Let me explain the movie. The movie is about Matt Murdock, aka Daredevil, played by Ben Affleck. Yeah, that guy, who would go on to play Batman. Well, Batman I actually really do like, but as Daredevil, he's doing his usual thing until he comes across a interesting stumble. I'm not going to spoil the movie, but he has to represent some guy, and uh, he comes in contact with the Kingpin, but he finds out that the Kingpin, who's running crime and everything, is pretty much after Hell's Kitchen, and it's up to him to actually defend Hell's Kitchen from Kingpin. Um, So I'm gonna spoil this part. Spoiler alert! It's revealed that Kingpin was the one who killed Matt's dad. He, for those you don't know, Matt's father was a boxer, and he was supposed to throw a fight, but he couldn't throw the fight because he knew his child was watching. At this time, Matt was already blind, but he didn't want Matt to see him throw the fight. Say see in parentheses. So he didn't throw the fight. Eventually, he is pretty much beaten to a bloody pulp. At that time, At that time, Wilson Fisk was working for someone else. I forgot the name of the guy that he was working for, but he would later on become the new Kingpin, and it was also him who killed Electra. Well, who put out the hit, per se, on Electra's dad. I forgot his name too, but pretty much, yeah. There you go. I've summed up the story. Eventually, they get into a fight, and one of the coolest lines from the Daredevil movie that there's two lines. I'll put it in the description, but it's interesting. Cool, two of them actually, and they're back to back. But my favorite line is where Kingpin.
I swear I'll tell him who you are.
Yeah, go ahead. Tell him. Tell the guys at Rikers all about how you got beat by a blind man. Be like blood in the water.
Oh, don't worry about that.
That was like, at that time, I didn't know what that meant. I was like, that sounded so awesome, so cool. Back in my mind, I have no idea what that meant. Later on, I would come to find out that it pretty much means it wouldn't mix. Everybody would be giving him the skewed eyes. It'd be the equivalent of Joe Chill running out to a whole host of Batman criminals and say, yo, guess what? Batman is actually Bruce Wayne. Did you know that? All the people would be like, that's stupid and we're going to kill you. And some would say, well, thanks a lot because you're the one who started all this mess because you killed a rich kid's parents and we don't even believe that, but we're going to kill you anyway. Which did happen. Batman, Brave and the Bold. But, yeah. With that being said, let's actually explain why this movie doesn't actually work for me. Again, for me, because at first I would love the movie so hardly I would defend it up and down, even though I wasn't a Daredevil fan. Just really liked the movie. And the music video that came before the movie started had really nothing to do with the movie itself ish, with the whole montage. I did like that montage scene, but yeah, that was about it. And so until I would discover the director's cut, which is coming up next, and then later on the Netflix series. So yeah, let's actually get into why the original Daredevil cut we got just doesn't work. First of all, it was too many plot threads. You had Matt Murdock actually trying to be. He was telling Matt Murdock's origin story, number one. So that's something. That was the main plot thread, but there you go. Then you also had him as a lawyer, and you didn't really do anything with that one. Then you introduced Elektra, and only to kill her and her father off, but then resurrect her in her own movie. I'm not going to even talk about that one. That was garbage. What else? Then you introduce Bullseye, only to not kill him off, but you just have him there. And he was a good antagonist, but that's all he was, an antagonist. In the comics, he's much more than just an antagonist. He's someone to be feared. And then you had Kingpin, and then you had Foggy, and then you had Ben Urich, and then you had the cops, and so many plot threads. Too many plot threads. Um, One of the things I would have done, nix all the plot threads. Let's focus on Matt Murdock being Daredevil, and there you go. Number two, um, in this one he wasn't as dark as the movie says he is. The only time he gets dark is when he's beating up a kid's dad, and then the dad is like, hey, this is Kingpin's territory now, man, and pretty much you can't do anything about it. I'm sorry. And he knocks him out. The kid's like afraid, like, oh, I'm afraid. And then Daredevil's like, I'm not the bad guy, kid. I'm just not. And then he ties that back around with Kingpin. Kingpin pretty much say, hey man, the cops coming after you. Cops coming after you, Daredevil. And then he's like, no they're not. Police chatter and everything. I hear that. They after you, my dude. Yeah, I'm a good guy. Justice is served. So I would have gotten rid of Kingpin. As cool as I was about to get this man's name, but y'all know who I'm talking about. Michael Clark Duncan. There you go. Michael Clark Duncan was an amazing and spectacular Kingpin. Later on, we would get Vince D'Onofrio, and I can't choose. They're both of them. Both. And it's even hinted that Kingpin and Daredevil, they're one and the same because they both grew up in Hell's Kitchen, which is true in the Frank Miller's comic run of Daredevil. In his version, he did grow up in Hell's Kitchen, so there's that one. But in the end, there was just too many plot threads. Everything was rushed, and which is really sad because Jon Favreau, who would not only play Foggy but also direct the movie, did a great job. I don't actually, and I look at the movie, I don't look at it as it's rushed. It's a piece of shit. It's a piece of shit. There you go. Move on to the next one. Now I see that there was some effort put into this. Just the fact that there's just too many plot threads, too many stories being told, which is why I love the director's cut even more. But now we'll talk about the director's cut later. But the movie in and of itself is not horrible. I'm not even going to say generic, because one thing Nostalgia Critic said during his review on Daredevil was that it was, to paraphrase, it was generic. It had all the cliches, but Daredevil came out in 2003. So all the cliches that were there, while they did interrupt the movie, it didn't really make the movie. There's a difference between a bunch of cliches that pretty much hold the movie, and then there's a bunch of cliches that just get in the way of the movie. So you have that problem, but it was more of, it got in the way of the movie, that's what the movie was holding. That's not what was holding the movie. The cliches were the glue. It was just more of too many puzzle pieces that did not match, that did not belong. So there you go. The other thing is I would have liked to have seen how Daredevil makes his costume, because in one of the shots you see him having a bunch of his equipment, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, how did you make that? At least in the comics, it explains that he sold it and he has no idea what it looks like. So I can understand that one. But in the movie, I did have questions about how did you get his costume made, uh, who created it, and how did he do the whole walking cane turn into like his signature billy clubs and his grappling. Um, wouldn't say grappling, but pretty much his billy clubs. That's pretty much it. The other part I would have liked to have known was how long was Ben Affleck's Daredevil active? Like how long has had that been? Because in the movie, it seems like this has been going on for like a while. I wouldn't say like a year. So if anything, I would have to like say 6 to 12 months in. That's just one of the things I do love about the Netflix series is they actually give you a definitive, somewhat date. They give you like a somewhat date of when when Matt actually began his road to becoming the man without fear. But in the series of season 1, they call him the Devil of Hell, the Devil of Hell Kitchen, not devils, Devil of Hell's Kitchen. So that was something I really did like and found very interesting. But again, that's that's just a little side note to that version of Daredevil. But just to give you like a little comparison of just dealing with dates. That's pretty much about it, because there's nothing else I can say that no one else has already said. I know I said I have not watched my old review of it, but I was probably harsh about it or praising it or in the middle of it. But there's really nothing I can say about this version that would like highlight its overall achievement, because it only thing that this version, that the original cut had, that that the director cut didn't have, was the out of place sex scene. And even then, it felt really out of place. Like, that didn't belong in there. That was probably like a last minute call on that one, since we had to build up the whole tension of Elektra and Matt actually getting together. I know in the comics, especially when it came to Frank Miller's run, Elektra was not a good person. I wouldn't say she was evil, but she was the girlfriend that she was not meant to be taken to the family. Let's just say that. Matt has a tendency to go for the bad girls, and the bad girls want Matt. So, but in this one, she was hella toned down. Like, spoiler alert, she gets killed in the movie. She does. On her first outing. And yeah, if you're trying to portray Elektra as badass, that's not how you do it. horrible. Horrible. You can see the look on my face. I was like, well, man, and I know why they did it. It's no, I'm not stupid. Back then, I kind of was, but now I know why they did it. It was to motivate uh, Matt into like continuing on the fight, even though he didn't need a motivation. Like Elektra's death was pointless. In the comics, it came out of nowhere, and that was why it was so seminal. That's why it was so seminal and recognizable and just famous, because it came out of nowhere. We didn't know that Elektra was gonna die in the comics. So in the movie, you throw her in here only to kill her off. But you make another movie in the Daredevil universe that you want to call, where she's back to life and it's presented as she's been doing this for years. And she's good at it. For years. And she's good at it. Right. But that's neither here or there. The point is, there's just nothing I can say about this movie that no one else has already said. I wouldn't say it's cliche. Yeah, there's some beats where you can like, oh yeah, I know what's gonna happen there, and yeah, I know what's gonna happen there, and oh yeah, I know what's gonna happen there. But I wouldn't say like overall it's cliche. Boring. It has its moments, but even then, the movie is so much in a rush that that boring thing is gone. So it's like, oh well, that was the thing. So yeah, there's nothing else I can actually say about this movie other than either studio interference, which probably was, or they had too many ideas and didn't know which one to go with and was running out of time on the rights, holding the rights to Daredevil. So they were like, just put it in there. Put it all in there. We'll fix it up as we go. So, yeah. But with all that being said, I'm actually glad that it exists. I do. If we didn't have that, then we would have had something different or worse. So, there you go. But at the end of it all, I'm glad that it did exist, because then we were able to get stuff like the director's cut of Daredevil or the Netflix series. And, yeah. That's about it. If you really wanted a Daredevil story, pretty much they should have just did an adaptation of Stan Lee's run on Daredevil. The first couple of issues, 1 through 5, but have the central villain of that one be Owsley or the Purple Man or Electro. But like, there you go, and you pretty much just talk about him and Karen Page's relationship, because that is a vital part of Daredevil as well. His relationship with Karen Page. So that would also tied into how he got his suit and his origin. So, but yeah, overall, if I had to score it, I would give this movie a 4 out of 10. Yeah, but it has the potential to be good, but just it falters on so many levels that giving it a 1 is disrespectful, but also at the same time giving it a high 10 is ridiculous. So, and I'm not going to give it a 5 because a 5 just says